Hey everyone, it's James with geometriccharts.com. It's August 31st, about 5:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's Friday. This is the daily chart of Bitcoin, BTC, USD on the Bitfinex exchange. I'll go over to the 4-hour in just a little bit, but I just want to show you the daily chart real quick. So first of all, let me just say that it's not investment advice, just to throw that disclaimer out there. But I want to show the daily chart. Now, I do not focus on lagging indicators really, but I'll show this chart. I show it with my subs, and I just figured, what the heck, I'll show it to everybody else because everyone wonders, why am I so bearish, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that I want to be bearish. It just, this market calls for it. And this is why, because we reach these zones where you get this excessive buying pressure, okay? And this run, whatever you want to call this, this is like the most pitiful run I've ever seen in Bitcoin to date. Whatever you want to call this is getting very toppy in nature. And that is why I talk with the tone I do about this market. I mean, it's just repeated itself time and time again, right? Ever since the bubble top, we have slowly faded into these zones to where the market is being propped up. And if this move right here is just another iteration of these prior moves, so far, this is definitely the weakest one. The volume definitely shows it, right? And like I've said, the volume that's coming in and out of this market is not good. It's just in and out and in and out. And they're trying and they're struggling to maintain 4.5 billion. And when that new volume does come in, it barely holds whatsoever. And it's typically washed right out as quick as possible, showing that I definitely believe the market is being held. So the biggest question now is, do we push up for another little push, maybe to about the 7,500 level, or are we kind of topping out already in this move to the upside? And again, the weekends, like I've said, I think on every video that is right before the weekend on Friday, and anyone who's followed along for a long time knows that the weekends typically don't have much price action to them whatsoever. There's a lot of volatility, the volume dries up, and the moves are just not that great. This was a weekend move right here. Okay, if you held during the entire move, I think this was like the beginning of the weekend right here. And here you go. If you held during that entire move, there was your profit margin right there on that move. The other weekend was, I think it was like the 17th was the Friday kickoff into the 19th. So you started like right around in this area, 17th, 19th. You're actually underwater, okay? And before that was this area right in here during another weekend, basically break even. So typically the weekends don't go anywhere in Bitcoin. They just keep going back to the chart and back to the chart. Sometimes they used to provide like little runaway moves, whether it was to the upside or the downside, and then it'd be basically negated. So you can kind of see that pendulum swing from Friday into Sunday evening or Monday morning. And you can just watch that pendulum swing over the weekends. Now it's basically everything's flat, a lot of chop. And when you're looking at this chart and we're zooming in on it, right, we can see what's happening a lot here. There's just a lot of volatility and price isn't going anywhere. And every time it tries, it's being sold off. And every time it tries, it's being sold off. Every time it's tried, it's being sold off. Every time it's tried, it's more than likely to be sold off. And we're just gonna kind of chop around. So while I do think there's more than likely a little more upside in this market, I do not think this is the final bottom and Bitcoin's going to launch and just take right off. Had those indicators on this daily chart been flipped the other way, and had we been looking at indicators down here across the board, yeah, sure. But the fact that we're in a downtrend and the fact that these indicators are getting this overbought based on this tiny movement scares me. So when I talk in a tone that might sound bearish to some people, there's some logic behind this. There's definitely some logic behind it. And one of the biggest problems I see that I know a lot of people aren't paying attention to is what's happening in the volume, that when it's coming in, it's going right back out. Coming in, going right back out. So that's one thing I've talked about. It happened during these prior runs. It happened during this area right here. This entire move turned into one of the nastiest sell-offs Bitcoin and the rest of the market has seen ever since like the bubble sell-off. I mean, there were some crazy sell-offs there. Yeah, this one's pretty crazy, but this one has some relief along the way. But during this entire move down, the volume is doing the same thing during these pops. So again, I just have to be very worried and very cautious about the market. The only thing I can really tell people is that at the end of the day, like if you're profitable, try to lock in your profits as quick as you can. If you're a long-term holder, don't even watch this crap. Don't even watch the videos. Just literally forget about it, right? If you're a long-term holder, I'm talking 5 years, more like that, don't even pay attention to this because you'll literally psych yourself out every single way you possibly can. So, you know, that's pretty much the analysis. Now, one thing that this market is doing that I talk about is like we're flattening out, right? This time element. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. We have to build up this energy. We have to rebuild this market, and we're going to do so through recapturing that energy. We're going to do that by basing out, and that is more than likely what we're doing. So if this move, right, the indicators are toppy, right? Yes, there's probably a little more upside. The volume's getting like whatever's coming in is going right back out. They're struggling to maintain this movement to the upside. If for some reason Bitcoin is able to kind of flatten out a little more like so maybe, and maybe we kind of just flounder around for a couple months, that's fine. I'll take that as bullish price action, as more than likely an accumulation phase for a bigger pop up. Right? So the same thing happened in the NASDAQ after the bubble top. I don't care to compare the charts. They're two different animals. But after a bubble top, it takes a while. It took 15 years from point A to point B to point C. It took 15 years to do this in the NASDAQ. I do not think it's going to take that long in Bitcoin. The point is the time factor, and we can see that on the chart. So there is a possibility that we are building a big rounded bottom in Bitcoin given the 5,000 range holds up. If we drop out of the 5,000 range, like I've said on my prior videos, okay, there's nothing but air all the way down into about the mid to low fours. If the mid to low fours don't hold, then we have a serious problem, but that's pure fantasy beyond that point. Even talking about the fours is pure fantasy because we clearly on this chart can see where these buyers are hanging out, right? Let me just change that real quick. Let's just make it pink, make it everything easy. So we can clearly see where the buyers are, and we can clearly see where the sellers keep showing up. Here, they're showing up here, and they're showing up here, and they're kind of like riding this thing as hard as they possibly can during this entire move up, right? So these sellers are just riding this move like it's a gigantic bear flag in process. And if this does turn into a gigantic bear flag and cannot hold this zone right here, we have some serious problems in this market as the next major buying zone is not till down here. Okay, so that's hopefully that kind of just illustrates why I feel the way I do on the market. It's not that I want to see the end of this market. Obviously, I'm doing myself an injustice talking about the market this way in my videos, right? I would have probably 20,000 subscribers now if I hyped it up to the moon every single time. But I'm not going to go to bed at night feeling great if I'm just sitting here spewing crap out of my mouth, telling people about the moon and whatever other crazy numbers people can come up with to try to attract people for all the wrong reasons. Like I'm trying to lay it out there as best as I possibly can. So I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not telling you where to buy and sell, but I'm trying to lay it out as best as I possibly can from what I have seen in this market. And a lot of my videos, they've come true, and a lot of what I've said, I've been talking about these moves being weak, and I've had to endure a lot of people hating on me and saying, you're wrong, it's going to the moon, blah, blah, blah. And, in many cases, I almost doubted myself a lot of the times when I'm sitting here saying that, this is it, or it's getting toppy, or I'm telling my subs that, hey, you know what, this is not the bottom, we got to look for another entry much lower, and you're just kind of waiting it, and it pulls on you because this market is fueled on so much hype. But at the end of the day, we can clearly see what's happening in this market. And if we start to top out here, and this rectangle starts to get flat like the rest of them, right? And those sellers have their area right here pushing price back down, this is the big area to hold. If this area does not hold, there's going to be more than likely a bloodbath phase in Bitcoin where the market pukes, and it could puke 1,000 points, it could puke 2,000 points. I don't know. And, you know, that's why I try to preach caution here, because I know there's people trading. I know there's people watching these videos. Everyone's watching tons of videos on YouTube trying to look for the next big thing out there. And people are looking at Bitcoin like a get-rich-quick scheme, right? Like, yeah, it was great in the past, back in here, but now it's getting tougher. Every time it makes its move, it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher, and people are not accounting for the time element. They're not accounting to what happened to these investors psychologically and what is continuing to happen to these investors psychologically. And we are watching a mass exodus in volume because of what's happening in this market, right? So I'm not here to hype it up. I'm here to put it out as realistic as I possibly can. And I know people value that. I thank everybody for their time, everybody for their support. Hopefully you're continuing to get some form of education out of this, and hopefully it's helpful in some way. I hate the fact it's literally redundant almost in some cases. I thought if I broke it up to 3 times a week, we'd get out of that redundant speech, but that's just unfortunately where this market is. I mean, how else do you spice up this? This is horizontal price action building a base, right? And as long as it continues to do so, it's literally going to be almost the same analysis, just slightly different. It's like the same pig, but I just keep changing the lipstick on it. And that's kind of like where we're at. And I'm waiting for the day we finally break out of this hold and start to maybe trend higher, right? I don't think the crypto market's going to disappear. And if it is, if they're just going to smash it, and let's just say the banking cartel wants to hammer this thing to hell like they've done with the commodities market, and they continue to do with the commodities market to make the fiat look like it's something great even though it's not. But again, that is the global power structure. And if they're using their weight to destroy and suppress this market, it's going to take a long time, because we are talking about billions and billions of dollars. That's not going to evaporate easily. And if it does not disappear and they cannot beat it to death, which they probably are, whether it's the exchanges, banks, whoever, I don't really care about that. But if not, it's just going to base out. It's going to base out. It's going to recoup its energy, and the market's going to come back, and more than likely come back just as strong as it did in the past, right? I don't think we'll see vertical price movement like this, but if we're able to base out in the future, we could easily see more of like a U shape, right, at a subtle incline versus what we saw during the bubble phase, but we could see something like that. And that, again, that could take years to pan out. I don't want to try to predict the future. I don't have a crystal ball. All I can do is just tell you what I see here, and I can tell you that if we break this area, gigantic red flags need to go off for everyone, because the base is now broken, and now we got to wait for the reset. So while there can be V bottoms in markets, W bottoms, double bottoms, triple bottoms, whatever you want to say, there's possibilities for that. But again, a market like this that experienced a bubble definitely needs to recoup that energy, and it's going to do so through nasty vertical price movement, or it's going to do so by basing out. And I think this market's doing it by basing out, and the time element is the biggest factor. So I think I reiterated it enough, and I've said it in a lot of my videos. I continue to say it. I'm sorry if it's mundane, but that's just the nature of this beast right now. So I thank everybody for their time, everybody for their support. I'll do another video Monday morning. If you do like the video, please like, comment, subscribe, follow. If you want to check out my subscription service, you can visit my site, geometriccharts.com. I go more in depth, like the numbers of Bitcoin, various other cryptos, stocks, commodities, some of the Forex as well too. But you can learn more about that there. I do morning and night videos in that subscription service. There's no contracts. I do charts as well, morning and night, for Bitcoin and various other alts, as well as the stocks too. If you have any requests, you can always ask me to. But that's something just more in depth. That's a little more of a controlled environment, so everyone knows where everyone's at in their positioning, and it's better to kind of give that advice. But other than that, my YouTube videos, I don't mean to leave them as like ambiguous in a sense. Like I do talk about specific levels. Like I've talked about that 7,500 potentially being the top, maybe 7,600, right around that zone. And then from there, we have that big bottoming base right in the 5,700 area. So those are the two big major zones. And when I trade, I like to look at the major zones because I'm not looking to be a daily trader, because if you are and you're trying to get these little swings in and play the wiggles all the time, you can literally beat yourself to death, and I don't like doing that. So I try to focus on the bigger picture, and that can help you kind of set plays up for the longer term. And especially in this market with this much volatility, if you're watching anything smaller than the 4-hour chart or the daily chart, I hope you got a neck brace on, because this market is crazy. So again, I'll talk to everybody Monday. Hope you have a great weekend, holiday weekend. We got Memorial Day. Maybe there's a pop there. I don't know. But hopefully everybody has a great weekend.